Hey everyone, I'm Mari Ray and welcome back to another Sims 3 speed build. It's been a minute since I've done a full speed build, and this isn't actually a full speed build, so I just lied to you. This is mostly just a really extravagant shell of a house. And before I really get into this, because this is like 40 minutes long, and before I continue on, because this is like the fourth time I've attempted to do this voiceover here, I live near a train track and the trains have been relentless. I swear they know, they can feel it. When I hit record on this microphone, they are like, let's all come at once and let's be the loudest thing on the frickin' planet. So if you can hear any train horns in the background, I am sorry. I never know if it comes through on the videos, but I have a limited amount of time to do this voiceover, and this is the fourth time I'm trying it, and I'm not doing it again. So I am so sorry if you hear the trains. But this house is almost like a take two, or part two, or version 2, I don't know, of a house that I built a while back. I think I had called it like Witch Manor or Witch Castle or something. I'm editing Mari, put the picture up because it's still up on the channel. I never took the video down. I have a habit of not really taking down videos on the channel, but I was going through my very top secret, super private reference folder that's called references that sits directly on my desktop, you know, and I was going through them, deleting some old reference pictures and stuff that I didn't even intend to use, or maybe I had already used them and didn't need them anymore, and I stumbled across the reference pictures that I had used for that particular build back then. Now, I've always said, like, I'm not qualified to teach anybody or give any tutorials on how to build. I'm a passable builder at best, nowhere near the best builder around, but I will always preach that use a reference if you're ever stuck. That's what I do all the time. If I don't know what to do, I mean, go to Google. You want to build like a family house, go on Google and type in family house and find a picture that you like, and then go into The Sims and use that for a reference. And when I say reference, I don't necessarily mean try to completely duplicate it in the game. That's kind of how I start with the reference sometimes, is like, I will like maybe say, I'm gonna try to attempt to build this like face of a house here, and then after a while I just go off of the wall there and I start doing my own thing, which ultimately ends up working out the best, because if you try to replicate something completely, I find that I never like it. So that ends up becoming a problem when I'm trying to completely replicate things. I also have a habit of like taking sections of something. Like, I like this part of this house, but I like this section of this house, and I like mash them together in the game to try to get a particular look that I wanted. So yeah, use a reference if you ever get stuck. That's my one tip of advice that I could give if you are ever curious. But I use a lot of constrained floor elevations with this one. This is one of the weirdest houses that I think I've built in a long while, so it was kind of fun, actually. But this house is gonna have a special place for me, because if you watch any of the other things on the channel outside of the speed builds, which you don't have to, but I started the Adventure Sim Challenge a long while ago. Geez, man, has it been like 4 or 5 years? It probably has been. I mean, I'll give it that there's been some very much unannounced extended hiatuses on my part, because there are times when I'm just like, I don't feel like playing the game, or I'm just tired, and I didn't touch even the channel at all almost for some times, just because I just sort of, ran out of steam a bit. It can be a little tiring, and sometimes I just want to chill. So there's been some times where there's been some delays in terms of the progress of that challenge, which is why it's been going on for so long, but it is slowly coming to an end. I don't think we have too much more in that challenge to go, and I never intended to abandon that family. I've always said I get attached to my Sims. I love my Sims, so I always intended that after I was done playing the Adventure Sim Challenge, that I would then take them and probably move them to a place and continue to play them in the background. I probably wouldn't necessarily make any like super dedicated series about them anymore, but I definitely intended to want to continue on with their life. And this is a personal save I've been working on for way too long, because I have a habit of also doing that, where I download a world and I'm like, I'm gonna completely rehaul this world and I'm gonna rebuild all the lots in it, and it takes me like 5 years, and then I never actually play in it. But I'm gonna change that this time. I'm actually gonna play in this particular save, and I really want to. And this save has a weird sort of vibe to it. It's sort of like Supernaturals, but yet modern. There's some very modern builds in this save, and there's some that are more of like a I suppose supernatural feel. I don't know what you call that build. Is it like a Tudor style? I don't even know, but it's sort of like a mix of that in this particular save because I like playing with supernaturals, and in my personal save I probably will have supernaturals. So since the Venturesome Challenge family are in fact supernaturals, I mean our mom's a witch, our dad's a genie, they have a hybrid son, and then they have a witch son, I think they'd fit right in here. And so I thought let's give this witch castle thing a second try here. I like this version of it much better than the first attempt that I had done, however long ago that was, but it's still not necessarily perfect, and it's not done, as I kind of mentioned in the beginning. This is a big, extravagant shell right now, so no download yet. Give me some time on that. I might need to figure out how to do an actual layout before I even think about putting this up for download, and I might just put it up as a shell, because in terms of decorations, I'm completely going to be freeballing that. I have no idea how to do the interior decoration of this at all. So yeah, I have no ideas for that. But the build itself, it's an interesting shape. This was an interesting build to do. Probably, again, one of the weirdest ones that I've done in a long while. The structure of this house is sort of like there's this weird like annex off the back, which is what I'm doing right now, where I don't even know what I'm gonna put here. I don't know what I'm gonna put in half of this house though. I just thought that it looked cool, and the reference picture they kind of had this like area that's right off the bat, and there's a reason for this like bridge that you'll see there. But the house ends up looking very castle-like at the end. Not a bad thing. I kind of ended up making it into like a castle farm. I guess that's an accurate way to do it. And right now I'm playing around with the back of the house, which is the bane of my existence, because the back of houses I struggle with a lot, because normally my reference pictures do not have any references to the way the back of a house looks. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm winging it 100%. And the back of houses, weird shape of this. Again, I use a lot of constrained floor elevations, and I don't actually know exactly what I was going for at the time of doing it. I got some interesting shapes out of it, but I could not explain to you where my thought process was really going there. I think I was just trying something to see if I liked the way it looked. Like the edge of this, or the over the garage here where we're playing around with right now, like I just thought it looked too flat. So I like, let's put a weird slope here. I don't know. Don't ask, but I'm changing that horrific blue carpet that I have a habit of placing down, because I want to see where the different floors stop, because when I have like lips that hang off the side, I want to see where the floor stops, so I can tell where my like second, third, and fourth floors are and stuff like that. So I typically place that horrifically hard to look at blue carpet. I don't know why I gravitate to that one all the time, but I do. And I've changed that now to be an actual decent color that doesn't blind you when you look at it. And now we're playing with the roof. This I knew this was going to be a struggle, because this is one of the weirdest shaped houses that I've done in quite a while. So the roof I expected to struggle with here, and I hate that. I hate that when you put a roof underneath an existing roof, it deletes part of the roof, or it's like invisible. It bothers me so much. I don't know if there's a fix for that, but I normally just end up not putting the roof over it when that happens. It bugs the heck out of me, that whole invisible section of the roof. So I'm going to end up changing all of this for that very reason, just because it bugs me. I had set this up so that I can kind of get those like little lips of the roof sticking off the side, but yeah, I ended up just changing the structure there. We're gonna go with a different way to do that, because I don't like that the roof is disappearing, and if I don't like it, I'm gonna delete it, because that's just me. So back was pretty simple, but again, I didn't really know what to do with the back of the house, so that was a bit of a struggle. I didn't even know what to do with this roof in general. So you can tell by how I'm just playing around with like placements here, and I'm gonna change this. But it has a lot of cone-like structures, like pointy cone structures, which gives it that castle vibe, that castle feel to it. There's this cone, and there's like one more cone-like that I'm gonna put in the back there, and that's gonna give like a castle-y feel to this entire thing. How I'm gonna decorate this again, I'm now thinking about it again, like, geez, man, this place looks like a castle. Like, how am I gonna do the decorations in the inside? But even there, you see that invisible roof. I ended up deleting it there, because every time I tried to place the roof, like the side there, it would cause that invisible section to pop up, and it bothers the heck out of me. But we have this like pointy place back here. We'll get around the flat parts of the roof. You'll see what we'll do in a bit there, but it's not very intricate or extravagant. I don't know what that like tall tower thing was going on there either, so I'm deleting it right now because I'm like, what the heck? But now that threw off the back and it's no longer even. The back like little extensions are no longer even, so I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna end up shifting them over and then extending the middle part by 1 so that I can get that evenness. I need it to be even or it will absolutely drive me crazy. So I evened out the back there and we kind of have that structure going on inside, and this is pretty much the last part of the roof that I'm going to work on, because at this point I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to figure out how to put a roof on the rest of this house, so we're just gonna wing it. So I went over to picking wallpaper instead, and my favorite like rock pattern in the game. I love this pattern for some reason, but it's a little bit of a hassle to work with just because it's very much the same repeating pattern. So to get the variation, there's like 3 separate different parts of it. And normally I do take the time to like put each individual part of the pattern in order. I didn't really do that with this build. I think it's because I knew how long I was about to be working on it. And you can see I'm playing around with trying to choose a different pattern potentially so that I could get these archways to match. These archways make no logical sense, so don't think about it too hard. They're kind of there for decoration, I suppose. The placements of these archways are not going to make any sense to you. So if you think like this is going to be the entrance of the house, it's not going to make sense. So don't think too hard about it. But I didn't like any of those rock patterns when they were like put out on a wide scale, so I got rid of them and I just tried to make a general like rock pattern for the actual like archways here that kind of match the color but not necessarily the pattern. I'm gonna play around now with the front because I didn't like the entryway. This is gonna be the front door technically up here, up the stairs there, and I know that my front door is gonna probably be 2 tiles wide. Again, we just discussed how I don't like when things are not even. When I have like the 2 tile wide door, if I had a 5 wide space and the door had to be shifted either left or right because it's only 2 tiles wide, it would bother the heck out of me, and I'd probably completely redo the structure of that area just so I could get it to be in the center. My brain wants it to be centered, and if it's not, it's gonna bug the heck out of me. So I'm playing around here with some more of these weird areas of this build. I think that I was trying to replicate some like architectural stuff that was going on in the reference, where they had these like sloped looking walls coming down on the side, and I mean, they look okay. Obviously this is The Sims, so I'm limited there, but I kind of ended up creating those diagonal walls that go into those 2 tiles in the center right in front of the stairs. So that's where our front door is going to be. And now that I have my front door, I'm trying to play around with trying to make this make sense. It doesn't make sense in the end. So again, just don't think about it. Don't think about it. It's my rule of thumb. If something looks like it doesn't make sense, just don't try to make it make sense. Just go with the flow. So we kind of have now at this point our front porch kind of set up here, and now I'm gonna use these fences to kind of do the hiding of the roof. Like I just mentioned, that flat roof is not gonna, I didn't want it to leave it looking completely flat, so we get this pattern that looks very castle-like using this fenceway. And there's some brick in the reference image. There's just like random parts of this like very castle-like like mansion that has like a brick part to it, so I kind of replicated that a little bit because I thought it was kind of an interesting like contrast to just have these like very modern looking brick sticking out of the very old looking whimsical castle. So we kind of have that whimsically look by using the top. This very much looks like a castle at this point in time, so I don't actually know how I'm gonna get it to fit necessarily with everything around. I'll have to see and try that out, but I spliced around a little bit of the pattern. Normally, again, I spend the time to actually put the pattern in order, but that takes a lot of time, and I was not into it at this point. I wanted to continue on with the build, and I didn't want to spend too long playing around with the rock pattern, so I sort of just spliced around random intervals of the different pattern for that rock. And then I started playing with the doors and the windows, and I'm gonna fight this a couple times too because I didn't like the first things that I picked. So you'll see me rotate through a couple of these too. I didn't really have a plan at this point. At this point, I'm off of the reference for the most part, and I'm just trying to make it work in game. So I didn't have a plan on which windows I was gonna use or doors I was gonna use. So I'll pick a couple different ones, and I still don't think this is going to be the end there. And this is what those archways are for. They're just sort of decorative. So it's like the archway, and then there's a window behind it, and it's supposed to be like an arch around the window, but I don't know how that's going to actually read in game, because I don't think the game is going to pick up that the window has like access to sunlight. So I think it's pretty much just going to be dark in there. Might have to light that up using actual lights in the game. It's fine. There's limits. And I didn't want to overdo it with the windows either, because my history in terms of building in this game, especially as a kid, was build a very large box and then put lots of windows, just cover it in windows. So I try to hold myself back from doing that, because for some reason when I see a very big empty wall in this game, I'm like, something needs to go there. It's too empty. There's nothing there. Like, why is this just a flat, just big wall? So then I'm like, I need to place windows, and then I sometimes overdo it with the windows. So I tried to not do that in this particular build, or overdo the window placement in this build. I tried. I hope I didn't overdo it. I don't think I did. And I did leave a little bit of a blank space there, because we're going to play around with some plants in a bit, because the reference image had some like ivy, and I thought that looked cool. And I definitely didn't want this castle, because it's a castle-like thing. I didn't want it to read as vampiric or like vampire at all. I wanted it to read like it's a witch or something. So I tried to go for a more earthy, growthy plant life vibe for the castle, more so than anything that's too like gothic-y looking almost. I do stick with the windows that you see now though. Those like triangular looking stone windows are pretty much what we're going to go through for the rest of the build. And again, trying not to overdo the window placement, because when I see a big flat wall, I'm like, let's put windows, let's do the windows. And I didn't want to overdo it. So I tried to tone that down. And now I'm going to start playing around with plant placement. I started to put some plants on those weird slopes that we have, trying to bring in some greenery, because I wanted it to look very alive. Like the supernaturals that live here cause plants to grow, and they cause a lot of foliage and stuff. I do think I undo this. I will put some more plants back up there, but I don't think this was like my first attempt at trying to see what it looked like, and I ended up undoing it. I also was trying to pick out which color plants I was going to be putting around the actual lot, because I had no plan. No plan at all for landscaping. That's why my landscaping is normally lackluster, because I'll go in with an idea for the house and then have no freaking clue what I'm going to do for the actual decoration around the house. So I end up using this ivy. This is one of my favorite sets of ivy. It's custom content, but I like this ivy. It's very pretty ivy that I've had for a while, and I use it in quite a few builds sometimes whenever I want to get that ivy look. So I tend to gravitate to this ivy. It's just very pretty. I think it's called like Enchanted Ivy or something like that. If I can find the link, I will put it in the description of this video if you're interested in it. But I use this ivy a lot. I really like it. So I ended up putting that there to kind of, again, want that greenery, want it to look like it grows. And I tried to use this in just different areas to sort of give the brick here, it's not even brick, like stones, the stone texture, some life in areas, because I didn't want it to read as too dead and too cold. And like, I want it to look like there's lots of life springing around this place. So I played around a bit with that. I tried to not to overdo this either, because I do think sometimes I go way too into the plants and it's overdone. That white like texture pattern there, I kind of spread that in some random places too. Again, trying to break up the brick. I'm trying not to have the whole thing look like just straight up stone all the time. So yeah, I deleted the stuff there, and I'm trying to play around with this sort of like access off of the side of the house. I don't know what this is. It's like it's blocked off from the rest of the porch, so I didn't really know what to do with it, and I could have deleted it, but I was trying to see if I could make it work. So we started bringing in these rocks. I love me some rocks. You all know that I love me some rocks, because it's not just a boulder, it's a rock. So we're going to be using rocks all around this build, because I have a problem, and I apparently really like decorative rocks. So I didn't know what to do with this back section here. It's very pointy. It was like very sharp. So I didn't like the way it looked. So I ended up like kind of spreading it out and tweaking it a little bit so that it's straight back there, so I could use that ivy in a logical way where it didn't look weird on that very sharp corner. And now we're kind of going on to the side and adding a little bit more ivy around in different places around the build. I didn't think it made sense to just have the ivy growing on like the one part of the house over there, so I tried to kind of spread it out a bit, but again, trying not to overdo it too much. But I did want to kind of make it look like the ivy was spreading across the house and kind of growing in different parts of the house. Now these archways created like little floor places where the game will not allow them to not have floor underneath them. So I ended up kind of making these little stick out balconies, and here we go with the rocks, my favorite. I start placing rocks down, and these rocks are going to carry out kind of throughout the decoration here, because I didn't really know what to do. I'm not the best at outdoor landscaping. I've discovered that in my time. I don't have a plan for the outdoor landscaping. All I knew is that this house is on like a half hill type of thing where it's very much sloped up on the right side, and then it slopes downwards where that garage area is. So I didn't really know what to do too much, and I didn't want to just cover it in rocks, but I also didn't want to just cover it in plants. So I kind of played around a bit with what we did here, and there are rocks like dotted all around this little hill. I didn't know what color to pick for the flowers at all, and I ended up going with yellow. So very much yellow hill here. I don't know why yellow, I just like the yellow flowers. I feel like yellow is a color that I don't use too much. So I thought the little yellow flowers gave a bit of a pop of a different type of color from the like gray stone and the green ivy that have the little yellow pop up around. And again, I don't have a plan for landscaping. That's why I'm rotating through so many variations of flowers and plants here. I don't even know if I know what I have in my game in terms of plants at the time. I don't have a lot of custom content that pertains to landscaping because I don't do it a lot. It's probably a problem, and I should try out landscaping a little bit more so I can maybe make it a little cleaner. But for the most part, I don't have a plan. I end up using these like yellow ground covers flowers to kind of create this like yellow flower hill up the side of the house. So where there's like this hill area where the house is on the slope, there's like these yellow flowers that go up it. It looks a bit weird in certain angles because their flowers are flat and the game does not actually like rotate them on an angle. So I kind of had to try to place them on top of each other in a way where they look like they're actually going up the hill and not kind of cutting into it. And the rocks help to break up the flowers just a bit because I didn't want it to look completely made of flowers, which maybe I should have. I don't know. I don't think the rocks look too bad, but I might just be me because I don't know the first freaking thing about landscaping whatsoever. So that could just be my inexperience there, saying that the rocks look good. But I now was trying to figure out how I'm going to terrain paint this before I continued on with this design around the rest of the house because I was going to do this around the whole hill. So I found that yellow flower pattern. I'm like, oh, this could give a slight illusion that there's even more yellow flowers than what they are without me having to place the yellow flowers literally across every section of this hill, because that would get a little bit wild. That'd be quite a lot of flowerage to have to place down there. And then I tried to figure out what to do on the other side of this because near the garage is very flat. It's not up on the hill, but I didn't want to leave it with no foliage. I did not place a tree here. I played around with the idea of a tree, didn't actually do it. So at this point, I just carried down the dirt pattern underneath the house. I have a habit of doing that, and if you want to know, it makes sense because if you had grass growing and there was a house on top of it, it probably wouldn't grow directly next to the like crevices of the house where there's a lot of shadows. So I just sort of put a little dirt path underneath the house building. And now I'm trying to figure out how I can connect the driveway to actually make sense because this lot sits in the middle of like a field. It doesn't fit in like directly up against the street. So I placed these cars down just to get an idea of how far apart the wheels are. And I kind of made like a track where it kind of looks like a dirt path where cars drive up to this like driveway section. That was the best thing that I could come up with in my brain because it didn't make sense for me to take the driveway all the way out and then it stops very abruptly at the edge of the lot that has no street next to it. So that was the best thing I could think to do. And then I started to carry over the yellow flower patterns over to this side around the actual foliage of the garage there. So it's just sort of like this little flower section that covers it up. I still wanted to have a garage because again, this world is sort of like a mix of modern and kind of supernaturally. So they own cars and stuff. So I mean, I don't even know how that's going to work because they're going to have to run to the end of the freaking place anyway because they have to run to the street first. But it doesn't matter. Don't think about it too hard. Don't think about it. That's how you get through this game. Just don't think too hard about it. But now that I was sort of satisfied with the way the yellow flowers were starting to look, they were starting to grow on me a bit. I'm like, okay, it doesn't look horrible. So now I was continuing on with the yellow flowers around the rest of the house. So I tried to take this a little bit at a time because I do feel like I rush through landscaping a lot because I don't know how to do it that well. And so when I rush through it, I sometimes just sort of place stuff and it doesn't necessarily make any sense or look the best. So I carried on the yellow flowers. I did it a little bit at a time. I also didn't want to overdo any particular pattern or anything. So I was trying to see if I was to try to cover this up, how many flowers will I have to place? Does it start to look like too much? Does it start to look too wild? Should I stop? And I placed some more of the fence down around that archway of the house because I wasn't gonna put a roof over that. And I start to bring that white pattern into kind of random places of the house just to try to break up the stone pattern. And here I'm going back and actually putting some more foliage on top of those weird constrained floor sections of the front of the house just to give it a little bit more life. We'll do that a bit toward the back. And now we're playing around with the back because what I ended up doing back here was making a swimmable pond. I don't know if there's any other method to doing this, but the way I've always made swimmable ponds has been placing the pool down and then you sort of hide the pool around the pond. Now this is a part of the house that I'm not exactly sure how it would read in the long run because I use a lighting mod which I do think changes the watercolor. So if you were to put this in your game or have this lot in your game, it might look different, which would make what I do to the pool not work. And even in my game, it's sort of questionable using this method because I changed the pool wallpaper to try to match as best as I could with the color of the pond water, but this doesn't always work because even throughout this build you'll see at some point, because I don't do all this in one session, there's no possible way I have the time to do this. This is 40 minutes long and it's 8 times the speed, so that tells you how long this took me in like actual time if it wasn't sped up. So there's no way I did all this in one sitting. So there's multiple times where you'll probably see the weather looks like it changes, and that's because every time I loaded the save back up, sometimes the game I guess chose a different weather pattern for the day. So it changes the watercolor when you do that. So I tried to get the watercolor to match on, I think this is considered like a sunny day in the game. It's very bright and the water is very vibrant and like blue colored. But at some point you'll see where there's a cloudy day. And I sort of debate with changing up the water again, but I'm like, I don't know how much that's going to save me in this because it's going to look weird. So, we have the water there, but it might look off is basically what I'm trying to say. So it may or may not actually work, for some people. And I did have to stop and go put a test sim down in here to test this pool because I've been burned by swimmable ponds that I've done in the past where I've done all of the like landscaping and the prettiness and then it's like, oh, it didn't work because they can't route to it. But this one looks like it's routable. There's sort of like 2 ways to get in and out of the like long little stretch of water back there. But I'm gonna start decorating around the pond in just a minute. I think I shied away from it right here because I wasn't sure yet what I was gonna do. I placed a couple rocks around to see if I could kind of nicely hide it, and I was like, I'm gonna wait for a second because I don't know if I'm ready for that. I was tweaking the color here of the fence pattern that I used because it wasn't completely matching in the sunlight. Sometimes the different lighting in the game reveals that the colors are off a little bit, but I'm kind of continuing that same little like pattern of the yellow flowers and then a little bit of dirt around where the other flowers are just to sort of vary that up a bit and then cover it over so it looks like there's yellow flowers covering the entire hill here, but really they sort of get more sparse back by the pond. And the pond was a struggle to decorate. You'll see when we get there. I didn't actually know what to do with that. So also didn't know what to do with this back wall because again, you guys, you see it's a big flat wall. I just talked about how, and when I see a big flat wall, I'm like, put windows on it. Let's just put a lot of windows on it. And I didn't want to do that. So I was like, how can I do this without just covering this wall in windows? And the bottom floor is actually just a foundation. So it's not even a real wall down there. There's no point in putting windows down at the last floor because it's a foundation. So I ended up creating this like balcony. I guess it works. You know, your Sims can come out, peek down over at the pond, have a little bit of fresh air. So I ended up with this little balcony doorway in there. And then I sort of bring the ivy down a bit, down into this area where it's like the ivy is growing up around the pond, up the side of the house, and over the doorway there that leads to that balcony. So I sort of brought the ivy back. I didn't do too much with the ivy near the back. I didn't want to overdo it again. And then I put these archways down around this bridge. So if you're walking across this bridgeway at the top of the house, you'll have that clear view of the pond as well to look out over. Down into there. I did bring some of the ivy up on the like support posts that are there underneath this archway, and then I was bringing some of the green foliage up and onto the top because I wanted it to look very alive, especially around the pond. I wanted there to be lots of plant life and stuff. And then I used that white wallpaper to try to break up a bit of the stone. And now I'm gonna try to create sort of almost like a covering over the top of the balcony there, and I do it a bit in the back just to try to, I didn't like how abrupt the white wallpaper was from the stone, so I used that to try to break up that pattern there so that you couldn't tell as quickly how abrupt the white wallpaper hit. And then I just used it as an opportunity to bring in some of the yellow from the front of the house over. So I'm like, we might as well stick with this yellow theme, right? So I brought a bit of the yellow flowers over into the pond area because I wanted it all to try to blend together. So I didn't want to use too drastically different of colors with all of the yellow in the front. I didn't think it'd make sense to all of a sudden have like the purple in the back. So I kind of brought over that yellow color, and I really didn't know what to do with this annex building in the back. I don't even know what it's gonna be. Oh man, it'll be fun figuring that out. And then I can decorate the pond area using some of the pond items, and so I put some lily pads down. I don't think I keep these lily pads. I think I change them out a bit later, but there's some tall grass back there because I was trying to kind of hide the edges of the pool a little bit is what I was attempting to do here, so that it tries to blend as a pond more than just, because you can kind of tell where the pool begins and the pond ends. So I was trying to blend the edges of the pool into the pond so it looks like it's one complete full pond instead of being like a very sharp edge of a pool that leads into a pond. So I used some of these cattails. I think they're called cattails, if I'm not mistaken. And I used some of those around the pond, and I didn't like those lily pads, so I replaced them with the slightly darker colored lily pads. I think those fit a little bit better with the color of the cattails to me. That's why they were too green. The other ones were too green. So at this point, I'm just trying to decorate around the pond, put a little bit of foliage around it and cover it up. I didn't want there to be too many flowers, but we will continue with the yellow flowers behind that like annex building there. You already see where I'm placing some of the yellow because that is also on top of a hill. So anywhere you see that like the hill like extending up and it's not flat, I kind of use those yellow flowers to decorate around it. So I'm already placing a bit of the rocks kind of sparsely throughout here because we're going to bring that yellow flower cascading flower thing over to this side right around the annex building here. And this is all winging it, by the way, guys. At this point we're completely off reference. I don't know what I was doing, and it's just trial and error. This is where we're going here. So I thought I'd place some rocks first, and then we spread it over the yellow pattern, and then we brought in a bit of that dirt around the edge, trying to get a little bit of detail and stuff around it. And then I'm going to start placing some of the yellow flowers up the hill. And again, I kind of abandoned the pond for a minute because sometimes when I start feeling a little stuck or lost in an area, it's like I need to walk away. I'll come back to this in a minute because I don't know what I'm doing, and it's starting to get a bit frustrating. So instead of just kind of forcing it through, I'll take a break and I'll step away from that and start working on a different part of the build. But I didn't want to go too far away from it and like spread out too thin because I wanted to put the detail into the different areas before I moved on to like another place. So we got the hill back there decorated, and then I think I'm going to come back over towards the pond. And I think I put some more of those like, I don't even know what you'd call those, the top things with the flowers are on them, the fence pattern. Finally, I pick a tree for back here. I think we go with a willow tree that's similar to the one that the world has placed there on the edge. But again, I fought with the choices. So many choices. But I'm like, well, fine, we'll blend it with the rest of the world that I'm building a lot in. And there's a willow tree already back there. So I picked that one. I wanted one that was slightly smaller. Didn't want to have a huge tree. So we have that one willow tree over there by the pond. And I think I bring that white pattern over here. Yeah, this is why we put some more of that, like, the fencing around. I didn't like how abrupt it looked when the white pattern hit the stone there. So I'm going to bring some more of that fencing around. Again, the windows were starting to get a little too much with the windows over there. So I was holding myself back from the urge of placing an infinite amount of windows all around the freaking building here, because we didn't want to go too far, and continuing the ivy over around this like annex building, because I'm trying to make it all look as coherent as I possibly can, and very much alive. I still am probably going to end up changing some stuff with this in the long run, probably when I start decorating and I actually figure out what this is going to be, because I don't know what this is going to be. It's just sort of like a random annex building at this point. But now we're going to the other side of the pond. So there's two sides of the pond here. There's the other side over here. I made sure that my posts, my support beams, all read as support beams over there. And I've started by bringing some of the ivy over so that we could have that coherentness of having ivy all the way across the build, even though it's kind of spread out a little bit. And then we bring some of our rocks over, because we all love rocks here. Or at least I do. This is a piece of custom content. I'm not going to keep this there, but I was playing around with the idea of making it look like a little pool of water that was sort of like growing down these rocks, or going down the rocks there. And it looked okay, but I didn't end up keeping it there. I don't know. I ended up not being a fan of it, which is also common when I'm building, where I'll put something down and I'm like, nah, don't like it. So we need to go with more rocks, because I love rocks, guys. Rocks are friends. And we use more of those lily pads to kind of blend it in. So it's a similar setup to what we did on the other end of the pond. And this is also the second outlet for the pool. So over on the right side, where I'm just placing those cattails over there, that they can get out on that side as well. So they can get in the pool on that side and out of the pool on both sides of it. So you can basically swim underneath that bridge and then end up on the other side and jump out of the pool here. How relevant that is, I don't know. How often it'll get used, I also don't know. I don't know. My Sims, I feel like I build pools from time to time, but I don't actually use pools as much. I just thought this looked kind of neat for the idea of having this little like swimming pond in the back of the house, because it's so nature and, you know, alive. But I kind of carry those lily pads underneath it. So I, again, trying to cover up the fact that there's a pool under there around the pond. So I kind of carried those lily pads under, and then we're just sort of decorating around the foliage with the dirt patterns and stuff. And obviously the back of the house is not done back there. And you can see the day just switched, because the entire lighting of the thing changed. So I at this point, this is another day of building here. So I think this is the overcast day I was talking about, where you can kind of see the pond water looks gray because the sky is overcast, and the game has changed the water color when that happens. So it kind of throws off the pond illusion back there. So take it as you will. I suppose it has its flaws. Could just completely change it to be a full pond if it's not a fan of it. But now I'm just trying to figure out what to do with this last little section of the build back here. The garage, the back of the garage, and the edge back there. So now I'm just decorating around there and putting some more foliage around. I don't even know what I would do with this particular area. It's just like the pond area where you can get in and out of the water on that side. So we're just sort of spicing up this area just a little bit with some coverage. And then I kind of go into, I think after this, the other parts of the build. I told you this is almost like a farm in a way, because I kind of built this another annexed building, or like exterior building that is basically a barn. They could have like a horse in it and stuff. Like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know if I'm going to even have horses in this game, but I may or may not. But essentially, I kind of imagine, especially since the family that I'm moving in here, we're pretty much going to probably end the challenge by growing a lot of plants and stuff, because I said I'm collecting one of everything in the collection journal, and that includes plants. We actually almost have all of the plants, but we're probably going to have to grow a few. So I imagine maybe she'll continue to grow some supernatural ingredients that maybe they'll sell or something. So they almost do have a farm in a way, where they're growing supernatural elements that you could use for potions and stuff like that. They're like the providers of supernatural organic supernatural ingredients. There you go. So I was building this sort of like annexed farm. I also think the reference had like a weird barn area, or at least another building towards the back of it, and I thought it wasn't too bad. And I had all this space over here on the edge. So I'm like, I could have a horse, but the horse would need a barn. So I was trying to figure out a way to make that work. And I fought with this for a while, because I was winging this. I was winging it, and I I'm still not 100% with this area, so I may end up tweaking this around some more at the end of the day, but I was 100% kind of winging this build back here. I also kind of wanted to have a bit of a greenhouse area so that we can continue to grow maybe some of the more specialty plants throughout the like winter time, when the other plants would be either dormant or dead because it's the winter time. So I did put, like I mentioned, like a horse area, so they could actually have a horse if they wanted a horse back there. But I don't play with horses actually that often, so I don't know if they'll actually have a horse or not. I need to play with horses more, but I kind of built the barn area there, so it should be accessible to a horse. I hope it's accessible to a horse. Again, I don't play with them too often, so I don't know if that caused any issues, but we have this barn area, and then I was struggling with how to do the roof for it. This is the story of my life. How do you put roof on building? That is the story of my life. And it cut through the door, so I was kind of fighting how to design this back area over here, because I didn't have a plan. This is the best way to build in this game, is to not have any plans. So I kind of got something. There's something back here. Still not sure if I like it or not. I was originally gonna do kind of 2 small little greenhouse areas back here, and I think I ended up deleting one. So we kind of have that round section over there with the little pop-ups, and I ended up using some more of that fencing because it was just hard to get the circular sections to blend with the square ones. That's that sounds like the weirdest sentence that I've said in a long time. But I ended up sort of just using that fence pattern, and here we're bringing in a little bit of the barn, or the more like Tudor-ish style of the wallpaper up here to give it like that barn feel across the top. And this was pretty generic back here because I wasn't certain if I like this area enough. I will probably come back and hit this area again, but here's the little greenhouse section. So this is going to be like, the private little greenhouse where you can come and grow some more specialty plants, possibly even throughout the winter, so that you always have access to them in there. It's very small. It's like a really small little section of greenhouse on the edge, and I'm going to delete that other lip because I was going to make that a greenhouse too, but I didn't like any of the greenhouse roofs for it, so I just deleted it off the back. It's fine. It would give more space if I do choose to put a horse here too, so that there's more space for the horse to route, because I know how routing can get in this game. I've played it for years, so we all know what that can encounter whenever you have big animals on your lot that could very clearly get stuck in places. So I didn't mind doing it. Now we're gonna play around with a fence. So around this area of the world, there's this like wooden fence around it because it looks like a farm zone or like a farm area. So this is where I said the farm vibes come in with this particular build. So I'm gonna take this fencing, and I kind of fenced off there where that's the area where I imagine the horse would probably roam and graze, is in that little fenced off area back there right by the pond, so it can go get some nice water from the pond if it wants to. But I'm gonna have that fence around there, and then I think I put a small section of fence right out of the greenhouse where I will probably grow outdoor plants or some more like trees or something in the outdoor where they can have some outdoor plants. But then it just looked weird to just have fencing only around that area, so I started to fiddle around with taking the fence around the entirety of the property. It almost looks a bit bizarre though, because it's so castle-like, which is why I said I may or may not keep it this way. I don't know, because the build is very castle looking, but then the fence is just so like, it's just fence. So I mean, it doesn't look bad, but it does sort of look odd in a way. I brought a bit of the foliage to this back thing. I didn't put any of the ivy on the barn back there. Maybe I'll carry some of that over at a later point whenever I come back to hit this for actual decoration. But I started to now try to figure out how can we decorate around the bigger parts of the exterior lot without going too crazy with the flowers, because the flowers are really on that hill, and I just sort of wanted to bring some foliage to the outside so it looks like, the rest of it's alive and not just completely flat. So I'm going to take this fence and bring it all the way around the lot, but I kind of don't necessarily put it right up on the edge of the lot. And the reason behind that is that I was putting some foliage around the like little bins inside of it. So the whole lot itself is not necessarily usable. There's sections of it where you could technically have it, but I don't really have a need for that much space. This is a 64 by 64 lot, I believe. So it's pretty huge for the way I build, because I build very small lots. It's the way that I typically go. But after this, I just sort of place down a lot of foliage around the outsides of the lot here, and I do put a bit more trees that sort of blend with the world around the outside of these trees here, and I just sort of scatter those about a little bit. And I do think I tweak the outside fencing here, where I bring it in some so that I can put dirt underneath it, so that you kind of have the look of the fencing being old and sort of established there in the grass. So we're now putting that dirt pattern down. And that's pretty much the extent of what I've done for this build for now. I will come back to this probably off camera. I don't think I'm going to record decorating the inside because I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. But hopefully, maybe, by the end of the Adventure Sim Challenge, I'll be able to show you guys a completed version of this lot if I have the time to do it. But I'm going to leave this here. That's pretty much it for this build. I cannot believe I managed to get the entirety of this freaking voiceover done. But I'm gonna leave you with what's left. So thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video, then please give it a like, or don't. That's up to you. But I do hope that you'll come back and join me for any more speed builds that I do here on the channel. Thank you all. Bye bye.